And good evening to our fellow listeners and followers. Today is Sunday, May 12th, 8:09 p.m. We have a very special interview program here. This is Federico Lines of States' Rights Radio and
Seth Hancock of Seth Hancock Reports. And our interview tonight is with Dr. Shiva Iradure. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. Who is an independent candidate running for president in the 2024 election. Before I get into it, I'll give a little bio for Dr. Shiva. He's a scientist, inventor. He's the inventor of email, an entrepreneur, a Fulbright scholar who holds 4 degrees from MIT, including his PhD in biological engineering. He started 7 successful high-tech companies, providing thousands of jobs in Massachusetts. His life has been about solving very tough problems by identifying the root cause, bringing together people to innovate real solutions. Now he wants to serve America beyond left and right to deliver solutions we need and deserve. And most importantly, Dr. Shiva is one of us, not another lawyer or lobbyist or politician. And thank you for coming on to talk with us tonight, Dr. Shiva. If there's anything else you want to say about yourself.
No, thank you for the introduction. I think the key thing people need to understand is that every one of these other candidates running for president, all of them come from above. None of them have ever worked bottoms up. They're lawyers, fake businessmen like Trump, someone with a Kennedy name. In particular, in his case, he openly tells people that personal integrity and public integrity are 2 different things. So these people openly tell you that they're bullshitters, and if you look at their lives, you'll find out that they've never been in integrity in anything, and they've never actually created anything. Everything that they have done has been given to them or through manipulation. A guy like me, and you look at what's happened throughout history, they do not want us, people, having our own leaders bottoms up, and that's what I represent. So our run for president is finally giving people an example of what it means when we have one of us. And the way I like to tell it to people is the way they run competitions now, they do not want real competition. So it's almost like you're doing a track and field race, and the only people you're allowed to run in the track and field race are people who have some type of unfortunate or, a disability or not even a disability, but they're not even qualified. Let's say there are people out there and you're competing for who can run the mile the fastest, and there are people out there who run the mile, in under 5 minutes, but you're only allowing people who run the mile in 7 minutes or above. So you never let real people ever run in these competitions. Because if real people like myself and others out there, the other 8 billion of us, were really allowed to compete, we would have a world that is unimaginable. So they create fake competitions, they control these elections, and they limit the quality of people can get in. And that's what our election's about. My journey is the absolute American journey, bottoms up. 4 degrees from MIT. I started businesses. Everything I have, I've earned since I was a 4-year-old kid, believe it or not. We can talk about that. So that's what this country is built on. These people are anti-Americans. They're not patriots. Everything that they do is fed to them. And they hate the American people. They really do. They're fake Americans. So that's a little bit add-on to what you shared.
Yeah, and, to go off of that, one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you is, I heard you on the David Knight show a while back about, your run as a third-party candidate, and Federico and I have talked a lot about how the Democrats and Republicans work together to keep independents and third-party guys off of the ballots and out of the debates. But before we get into that, Federico and I have discussed this election a few times now, and I think the best way to describe us we are political skeptics, especially from the national level, that, like you said, it's a bottoms up. People need to start changing their own lives. People need to take accountability for their own lives, and electing politicians, president is not what's going to change us. So as political skeptics, if you can give us a reason why we should vote for you and consider you for president in 2024.
Good question. Look, I don't believe in electoral politics, but let me give you the background on it. When people become part of our movement, and to us, the word movement is not something that people just hijack. Voting, not just voting for me, but becoming part of our movement is an exemplification of you actually becoming a real citizen. Citizens are supposed to have a high degree of consciousness and then exercise their citizenship muscle every day, not once in 4 years. And that's what I've been doing since I was a 4-year-old kid. So this is a vote for me is about you acknowledging that you have to get off your butt and actually do something. Since 5 a.m. till today, we have state leaders in every country. I was just on the phone with Philadelphia. We have people collecting signatures. Now, let me just step back and talk about how the establishment works in creating a nihilistic view of driving people into not doing anything, into complacency, desperation, going left to right, or even fake independence. The reality is that everyone comes to a point in their life, and they may do it implicitly or explicitly, where they have to ask this question: do you accept the world the way it is? Some people don't even think about that question, but if you do, you may accept the way the world it is, and then you sort of stick your head in the sand and you go out your own life, and as Voltaire said, you just have your own little garden and you don't give a damn about anyone else. And that's one way to live life. And no one's going to make judgment about that, but that's one path. The other path is to say, wait a minute, something doesn't smell right here. I want to change the world. I don't like the way it is. Now, when you get to that point, the establishment has created their own battleground on how you participate. And they basically tell you can do two things: the electoral process, right, or the legalism process. So if you don't like the way the world is, run for office, write to your congressman, da-da-da-da-da. The other is, why don't you file a lawsuit? Why don't you become a lawyer, right? These are the two alternatives that those in power give you. And so typically when people get involved, they only do one of those two things, and they get brought into the swarm. The other option, which history shows has always been the way anything is substantially changed, is when people built bottoms-up movements, and they connected their own suffering, their own oppression into the larger collective, and they did, local acts which affected global things. So local, I call it, global and local. And that takes a very high degree of consciousness. And if you come from that standpoint where you're building a bottoms-up movement, you can do legalism and you can participate in electoral, but you don't have any illusions. You're using those events to further mobilize and advance people's consciousness. That's what we're doing. So when I was 4 years old, 5 years old, growing up in India, I came to understand the caste system. And it really, really bothered me, and I experienced the brutality of it. So I got very, very interested in understanding politics as a very young kid. And then I experienced ancient systems of medicine. And I saw there are many powerful ways to affect the human body. That led me to a journey, to understand systems. When I created the first email system as a 14-year-old kid, coming to MIT, doing a bunch of degrees, but it was all around understanding the nature of complex systems. And that journey led me to understand that you can apply systems principles that I uncovered to anything, to your body, to politics, etc. So our movement, Truth, Freedom, Health, recognizes that freedom, truth, and real health comes from bottoms-up movements. Now, as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid, when I was first at MIT, I realized that all of the left wing, the obvious establishment of the left and the right, and it's not just the left and the right is a lesser of two evils. It's the obvious establishment, like the Bushes, the Clintons, etc., and the not so obvious establishment, the Booby Kennedys, the Trumps, the Obamas, the Bernie Sanders, the left and the right. The establishment has created the not so obvious establishment to manipulate people to think that one of these people from above is going to save you. so people sit on their butts and not do anything. That's what's happened. So the conclusion that you realize is that it is movements that have changed things. So when I ran for first time, I never believed in electoral politics, but we decided to jump in when Elizabeth Warren was when I ran against her, and our slogan was only the real Indian can defeat the fake Indian. Now, we used that opportunity to galvanize people and to draw this real big distinction between the liberal elites who talk a good game and their hypocrisy. And we had a lot of fun with that campaign. We got close to about 150,000 votes, and we're the ones that forced Warren to take that DNA test. Then we ran in 2020. Again, guys like me are not supposed to run for office. We're supposed to stay in our lane and be nerds and engineers. But it was my run in Massachusetts which exposed the fraudulent election system. We're the ones who showed that they can flip votes on the voting machines. We're the ones who discovered the backdoor portal into Twitter and how both Republican and Democrats unanimously voted to create CISA, which created the infrastructure that you can silence U.S. citizens using the mechanics of government control of social media. We did that in 2020. People like Tucker Carlson concealed our data. Same with Glenn Greenwald. So you have a whole bunch of fake journalists out there who do limited hangouts, and they're part of the deep state infrastructure. So my running for president, we made it very clear when I launched on April. What we showed was a curve, which shows that the life expectancy in the United States is going down. So if you have a child today, your child is going to live shorter than your life. Now, why did I start with that? Because that's a key performance indicator of the establishment. And this is not because of COVID. This is because of a set of policies over the last 50, 60 years, starting with John Kennedy and onward, which created a systematic process of many features that have destroyed the lives of American people. Stress policies which affected people's biology. And as a systems biologist, you can see it. It was during the lockdowns that many, many people got even sicker. 600 billionaires increase their wealth by 2.3 trillion. You go back to the incredible amount of stress and dysfunction that's been created to communities. The number one reason people live long is when they have close family ties. That's been destroyed in this country. But it's been a set of policies. So therefore, the only way out of this is a systems overhaul. There's not going to be any little tweaks. So my running for president gives people a real alternative. And I make it very clear, even my being elected as president doesn't mean you're sitting in the White House, you're going to change stuff, because the White House is corrupt. The legislature is corrupt. But my winning, what would I do? I would do radio shows like this, telling people they need to mobilize bottoms up, inspiring people that if we're substantially going to change anything, it needs to be people raising their consciousness. So running for president at this opportune time, people say, wow, wait a minute, we've never seen a guy like this. He teaches us stuff. He educates us. He's put his butt out on the line. He's the one who started the Fire Fauci campaign. He's the one who exposed the, quote unquote, the pandemic. He gave us solutions. So we're giving people the opportunity to see what they can be of themselves and mobilize movements. That's what a vote for me is about. We have no illusions.
Yeah, and like you brought up, you started the Fire Fauci campaign. I read your letter to Donald Trump from March of 2020, and that's one of the things that really frustrates me. Like you said, there's these grifters, especially on the right. I come from the right, so I hear what my conservative friends are saying. All of them were on board with the lockdowns and stuff like that at the beginning because Donald Trump was doing it. And then suddenly they're telling the truth today, whereas I was against all of it right from the beginning, and you were against it, as your letter to Trump shows. Just before we get into the health stuff, though, I want to, like I said, we want to talk to you about just the hurdles that are in place for you as an independent, and just how the two parties, they like to scream about rigged elections, but they never talk about how they've colluded to keep third-party candidates off the ballot and out of the debates. And so I'm just curious about the hurdles you've seen as an independent candidate and just how hard it is to get.
Yeah, I think let's define independent. We're talking about independent of the swarm. Booby effing Kennedy is part of the swarm. He's part of the deep state. He promoted lockdowns. He comes from the organized Kennedy family. He's a fake independent. He steals our material. He didn't say shit against Fauci. So we need to understand he's not an independent. What we need to think about it is, are they independent of the swarm? Have they lived the life of everyday American working people? The answer is no. So what's happening right now is that that started really in the 50s. The establishment realized that there were going to be real heroes, bottoms-up people like myself, truly independent people, guys like you. And so what they realized was we need to create fake heroes, people who talk the talk but never walk the walk. And what I mean by this is they tell the truth. Telling the truth now has become a grift, but they don't tell the truth at the time. They don't tell the truth when it matters. They don't tell the truth to mobilize people. An absolute example of that is Fucker Carlson, Booby Kennedy, Trump, all the grifters you mentioned. They don't tell, for them telling the truth is, they tell it when it's opportune for them to get views and clicks. In 2020, I was the first one to expose the pandemic for what it was. You can go look at the good news. It's all on my timeline. We came up with a solution. Vitamin D3, quercetin, zinc. Zelenko stole it from me. We helped billions of people, hundreds of millions of people. We saved. Trump did nothing. Trump was all part of it. Again, Booby Kennedy promoted lockdowns. Go look in March of 2020. He waited 1.5 years to steal all my material and write a book on Fauci. His family is from the organized crime pharma family. John F. Kennedy's one who promoted. He's the one who signed the 1962 Vaccination Act. Teddy Kennedy, the murderer here in Massachusetts, who murdered a woman and became a senator for that, is the one who saved Big Pharma. He was a co-sponsor of the bill for the National Vaccine Injury Program, which indemnified Big Pharma. Then Booby Kennedy was backed by a Big Pharma guy, Mark Blackstone, and he's the one who openly says, I believe in full vaccination of all Americans. And then he, fork-tongued, he critiques the CDC and FDA, claims that he's going to solve their corruption by getting them to create quote-unquote safe vaccines. A complete bullshitter. So the establishment has created fake heroes, Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, on the left and the right. And they literally, it's a CIA operation that they have now. Because they know the American people are breaking from them. So to manipulate them back, they do not want them to follow real leaders like me, bottoms up. They have to create fake versions of me. And that's what they're doing. So that's what the dynamic needs to be understood. Once people understand the dynamic, they're going to get much wiser. They're going to look into these people's history. Well, what did you actually do? Does your talk match your walk? Let's look at your entire history. All of my stuff is out there. You can go find everything online. So there from day one. So these people's history are just complete contradictions. Complete contradictions end to end, and then they have PR machines which cover up their contradictions. And then they manipulate people into compromising what their gut tells them is wrong. And this has been the manipulative process that's been going on in a relentless process by, trillions of dollars poured in to manipulate people's brains to accept the lesser of two evils, the obvious establishment and the not so obvious establishment. So when we say independent, we need to really look at it. I'm independent. I'm off the plantation. They're all on the plantation, and they want to keep people on the plantation. So when you're off the plantation, you're off. You do interviews with real independent people like you guys, Yeah. So.
And, in terms of the campaign right now, what are kind of some of the things you need? How many signatures do you need on average in each state?
It varies from 30,000 to 1,000, To give you an idea, when you collect signatures, the spirit of this entire thing was, so if you want to get on the ballot, the goal was, Tom, Dick, or Harry wants to get on the ballot, do you actually have support, right? So the states set different thresholds. Oh, you have to collect so many thousands of signatures. Some of them make it very onerous, okay? It's only the Democrats and the Republicans can get on. And the idea was that you would actually have real supporters, volunteers, right, who go out, stand in the rain and cold and collect signatures. Well, we actually do that. They don't. Booby Kennedy goes and gets signature vendors. And by the way, when you donate for signature collection, do you know it's infinite amount can be donated outside of the campaign finance laws? This is where the fraud begins. So the Zionist hoodlums fund Kennedy to get on the ballot, or he hijacks other political parties which have ballot access, and he pays them off. That's not independent. And the Democrats and Republicans don't have to collect anything in certain states. And the interesting thing is, I've not seen them collecting anywhere. In the middle of COVID, when I ran for Senate, we collected 25,000 signatures. In the middle of COVID, my opposition Republican candidate couldn't even get 5,000, and then he colluded with the Secretary of State to change the rules. This is what they do. These people are cheaters. They never play by the rules. So we're actually collecting signatures anywhere between 1,000 to 250,000. In some places, we will get on the ballot, and even to get on the ballot to do a write-in, you have to do a different signature process. So we're going to be on the ballot either as a direct candidate, or we have to get signatures to be a write-in candidate. But nonetheless, we're going to be on the ballot. And to everyone listening, if you understand that you finally have one of us, and you've seen my videos, you like it, and even you guys, help us get on the ballot. This means people have to go out and collect signatures. There's a discipline. This is activating the citizenship muscles. So that's what we're doing. Yeah. So I don't know where you guys are. Which state are you guys in?
I'm in Florida.
In Illinois. Yeah.
What's it?
Yeah, I'm in Illinois.
Yep.
And I'm in Florida.
Florida?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we need to get around 250,000 there. So anyone out in Florida listening, go to Shiva4president.com and volunteer. But we actually have people collecting. Not like we're not paying signature vendors, $1 a signature or $10 a signature to collect. And that's what Kennedy's doing. And he's pocketing most of that money.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your Truth, Health, Freedom movement. But before we move on to that, I don't know if Federico, you had any questions about this topic about ballot access.
I know that I think I've seen that you're trying to get the balance in all the states or several states. My only question is, Dr. Shiva, is when you do get, if you do get in, what will be your first as president? Because that the chief executive is supposed to be a very weak position, but nevertheless, what would be your first act to call on Congress to do? I don't know if you would do executive orders, but I hope that you would call on Congress to act on, and then you signed it. So, what will be your first act of Congress to pursue? All
right. Well, let's go. Since you asked what's the first thing, what's the First Amendment? The First Amendment says Congress shall pass no laws to abridge freedom of speech, right?
Or religion.
Yeah. But if you look what Congress did on November 16, 2018, they created the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, which created the backdoor portal into every social media company. My lawsuit uncovered that. In Bearview, as you guys know, if you go to winbackfreedom.com, it was I who uncovered that. Not, Missouri versus Biden. And Tucker Carlson and Glenn Greenwald concealed that lawsuit, even though they had an opportunity to cover it. But we got it out to about 500 million people. It was, I represented myself. We uncovered the fact that in 2018 at the Belfer School, the Atlantic Council, as well as the entire set of academics within the deep state had created backdoor hooks into every social media company so they could censor U.S. citizens. And they could launder censorship to private nonprofit agencies. And I was subject to that. I was one of the first victims of that when I exposed the fact that the government destroyed ballot images. This is in 2020. I was thrown off Twitter. And then in my federal lawsuit, I won the preliminary injunction in cross-examination where the social media director in the government of Massachusetts admitted that they have a special portal. The government, this is the grossest violation of the First Amendment. Well, this was signed into law as a part of CISA, which Trump created. So-called red, straight, make America great, lock her up Trump. So it was Trump who executed that, and that law was passed by Congress by unanimously in the House and by unanimous consent in the Senate. The first thing I would do is repeal, by executive order, put a stay on that and immediately ask Congress to repeal that. Number one. Number two is what is about to happen right now. You have a bunch of Zionist hoodlums in the House who have just passed a bill which says that anti-Semitism will be equated to anti-Zionism. This is quite extraordinary because, for 40 years I've been educating people that it was a Zionist who collaborated with the Nazis to butcher Jews, that Zionism is a political ideology, just like Brahmanism is in India, just like Nazism is. Being anti-Nazi does not mean you're anti-German people. Being anti-Zionism does not mean you're anti-Jew. In fact, there's a growing number of Jews who are anti-Zionist. So since October 7th, that knowledge has gone explosively outward. Masses of people are saying, oh, wait a minute, anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. So again, Trump, by executive order, he's the one who started the ball rolling, started equating them. In December 2023, Mike Johnson, a hoodlum, complete rabid nutjob, quote-unquote Christian Zionist, pushed through the resolution equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. And now, in I think 301 to 70 or something like that, the House has passed a bill that they're saying that they will define anti-Semitism as defined by the Israeli Holocaust Remembrance Association, which is a completely Zionist hoodlum organization that most Jews don't even accept. So we're heading into very dangerous times, very fascist times. And it's being led by the so-called red state Republicans.
Yeah, and I think, going back to, the first discussion about the grifters and stuff is, how many conservatives have been decrying attacks on the First Amendment, but yet now we've got this new bill with Zionism and anti-Semitism, and now they're back on the plantation. They're now supporting attacks on the First Amendment. And to me, I'm just a free speech purist. Even if it is anti-Semitic, you have the right to say it. I mean, they're wildly changing definitions to make people who are against the Zionist government as anti-Semites, but even true anti-Semitic speech is still protected by the First Amendment, and that's what the First Amendment's for.
Well, what they're doing is they're connecting it to the Civil Rights Act, right? So what they're going to use they're weaponize the Department of Education to basically state that if you read that bill so they outsourced this to the I-8, whatever they call it, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, okay? Definition. And 7 of those 11 definitions, examples they give of anti-Semitism, are actually anti-Zionism. If one of the definitions, for example, says, if you say anything, if you level criticism against Israel that is greater than criticism against any other country, that would be anti-Semitism. So, for example, if you say, oh, Israel's human rights record is worse than Australia's, which it is, okay? Then that'll be anti-Semitic. If you say Israel, pollutes the world more than, England, that's anti-Semitic. As an example. But that would be like people in the United States passing a law saying that if you critique the United States, that means you hate white people. That's what they're saying. And that therefore hatred of white people is covered by civil rights, you say? Or hating black people, so on. So this is quite extraordinary. And this is happening step by step by step. And I believe what's happening is the discussion on Zionism to me is one of the most important discussions, because if you go back and look at the arc of history starting in the 1900s, you look at what was happening in Germany. There was a broad-based movement of working people in Germany rising up. I mean, the German working class was flexing its muscles. They were one of the most powerful movements. And this was very dangerous to the global elites of the time. Because, if you look at the industrialization of Germany, it was quite extraordinary. I mean, Russia only had about 3 to 5% industrialization in the late 1900s. It was a feudal society. Germany was highly industrialized. Britain did not like this, right? Britain did not like the strength of Germany. So the German working class was coming into power. They were very strong. A lot of Jewish working class people were leading those trade unions. People forget, when people attack Jews, it's very dangerous. They were the bourgeois Jews, the banker Jews, the Rothschild Jews, who were collaborating with fascism, with Hitler. And then there were working class Jews. There were close to, 2 million very powerful people in the workers' movement in Germany. This scared the hell out of the global elites. And the global elites are the ones who the global bankers funded Hitler. Because after, World War I, the German working people were deliberately attacked, right? After many of the treaties that were made. So they were squeezed. So the working class of Germany was quite powerful. Many of them Jewish people who were considered themselves Europeans were fighting Hitler, wanted to fight him. And there was a small group of Zionists who were backed by the wealthy Jewish bankers. And the Nazis actually liked the Zionists because Zionists loved anti-Semitism. The more there was anti-Jew hatred, the more Zionists could point to that and talk about ethno-cultural nationalism. So this was what was going on. And Hitler, who did Hitler first butcher? He used to go to beer halls and knock out all these trade unionists. And the history of Germany really needs to be studied carefully. I was fortunate. I had really good public school teachers, in the mid-'70s who taught me this. But most American people don't know this. So what's happening now is that the same collaboration between Nazis and Zionism, which took place to actually suppress these bottoms-up workers' movements, and they were very successful, is now occurring again. So the broad education that occurred over the last 9 months, Zionism is different than Judaism. Wow, that's pretty powerful. Anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. So what you see happening is, because of Trump's executive order that he passed in 2018, Mike Johnson and all these clowns are now reuniting Nazis and Zionists. I'll give you an example. I put a tweet out. It was quite fascinating to watch this. I said, we need to applaud the Russian working people and the people of the Soviet Union, who are the ones who actually were the true heroes of World War II. They're the ones who fought Nazism. And what's fascinating was the Nazis, literally Nazis, saluting Hitler that came on my tweet post. And so what's happening is the elites know that people, the American working class and people in this country have figured out, if I say stuff against Zionism, I'm not anti-Semitic. So they've gotten emboldened to have that discourse. So they need to conflate again anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism so they could, push these draconian laws through. So now they've let loose the true, quote unquote, true people who actually hate Jewish people. You see? And that's what's happening. So you're going to see so Zionism loves anti-Semitism. The right-wing Hindus love fundamental Islam, just like Zionism loves fundamental Islam, because they use that to fuel anti-Semitic hatred, and then they could move all the people who are sort of, just whatever, secular Jews, to become fanatical Zionists. You see? It's a very powerful weaponization that they're doing.
And a lot of that gets into, the way we meddle in the affairs of others is, we keep, looking at a lot of these terrorist groups that are our friends one day, and then they're our enemies the next day, and then they're our friends again. And it's a muddled mess when we have arrogant politicians thinking that they need to be the policemen of the world, and it leads to all these crazy things that people don't even study the history about.
Yeah, and I think the main thing people need to, so the way, there's a lot to study here, and the way, so what I've done at Truth Freedom Health is Truth Freedom Health is a movement. It's an institution, it's an organization, it's global. Without the understanding of theory and history, you're screwed. And the fundamentals that we teach there integrates system science with politics, system science with health, system science with medicine. You can use the knowledge of systems to heal your body. You can use it to understand society. So the core of it is that's without that consciousness raising knowledge, you're sort of screwed in today's world. But one of the things when you apply that science to politics to keep focus, you discover one singular thing. If you want to keep it simple, those in power do not want us to build independent movements, bottoms up, that are aligned with the interests of the 8 billion of us, working people. That's their central goal. And the other piece of that goal is to make sure that we all get demoralized, nihilistic, to thinking we can do anything. Well, you can't really do much. That's just human nature, ... fill in the blanks. Oh, you can't do much. You got to vote for the lesser of two evils. Oh, you can't do much, just go live on a farm, go off grid and become a prepper, There's nothing you can do. We should just all take guns and, one day just have a mass terrorist movement, right? That's not going to work either. It's only been through broad mass-based movements of raising people's consciousness that is ultimately what wins. And they don't want people to do the long game, put in the effort. And for the last 50 years, we haven't done that. That's why since 1970 till today, working people's $47 trillion in working people's wages have been transferred upwards. And during the 1900s to 1970, when there were close to 11,000 strikes, 250 million people taking to the streets, the bottoms-up labor movement was strong, not the top-down one. That's when Americans gained a lot. Infrastructure, all these gains. The American working people flex their muscles. So that citizenship muscles have been weakened, have become flab deliberately. And that's where we're at today. And the only way out of this is we have to reset, understand what we have to do. And that's what our movement is singularly doing globally. And it's step by step by step. We teach people history. We teach people how to organize a movement. We teach people why we need to build a movement. And then we give people the physics. Truth, freedom, health. All these, notice I don't say and. You need to have freedom. You need to have science. And you need to take care of your physical health. You need to do all three. All are interrelated. Health is the vessel in which freedom and truth can operate. But you can't just be all healthy and working out and, being a yoga Nazi and you don't fight for basic freedoms. Nor can you be fighting for freedoms and then be unhealthy and 3,000 pounds overweight, You do all of it now. You have to be a citizen scientist. You have to be a fighter, activist, and you actually have to take care of your own health. And that's what we teach people, all those three things in very practical ways, using the same foundational science.
Yeah, one thing that I want to point out that you've pointed out several times, and it's interesting, is that we all want everybody to be independent and not be dependent of a national government or an international world government. And this country was built on to be individually independent, starting with the people and with the sovereign states and a very minimal federal government. Now, of course, the federal government has increased dramatically and drastically. That is, many people have just said, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I've become too much dependent of the federal government. We saw that during the COVID lockdowns when Trump started sending out COVID checks, and then Biden did the same thing. This country has become too much dependent of, and quite frankly, every single country around the world has become dependent of a central autocracy, central sphere of governance. And that's something that, I think from what I hear from you, Dr. Shiva, and, our communication is that we need people to be more independent, to think for themselves, to know themselves, and to, stop listening to these bullcrap artists from the media and the politicians, and just listen to ordinary, to regular people that are trying to really make a difference and really bring back the principles that this country once established.
Yeah, and the other thing is what's happened is, you see, the knowledge framework that was used to, let's say, develop the Constitution, and you go look back, it was philosophers, lawyers, right, who had typically been leading the way in understanding political thought. And that has certain limitations because it's not grounded in fundamental laws of how the world operates. Now, that did not really come into being around the 1920s, 30s with the advance in system science. So I've taken that realm, advanced it, and provided a framework, a very powerful, grounded framework anyone can learn, founded in hardcore science, scientific principles, and how you can see the world as it actually is. I published on that. You can use this at the molecular science level. You can use it at the physiological level. You can use it at any level. It's the foundational principles. So, the classical liberalism doesn't work. The libertarianism stuff doesn't work. Constitutionalism works to the extent that it needs to be advanced through these laws. Now, you look at the framers of the Constitution, the people who actually were grounded in learning some of these principles, that's where they were coming from, natural laws. And so that's what I've advanced, because science too is advanced. And once people understand these laws, which we've made, anyone can learn them. We have people who are hairdressers who teach it to PhDs. So it's taken me a long journey to, if you saw the Swarm video, shattertheswarm.com, which I recommend everyone go see, 15 minutes, everyone should watch it with their families. In 15 minutes on a whiteboard, I explained to you engineering system science, and you really learn how the few control the 8 billion of us. But we have to study. You guys need to study. Young people need to study. But it took me a long process to uncover this science. It is a field, it's a body of knowledge that heretofore has not existed. So the innovation here is not only the discovery, but the curricula and short videos where everyone can understand it. Because that's where we need to go. Once you understand this physics, you understand how we can shatter the swarm. But that's where we're at. Mm-hmm. We're at a very important point in history that we need enough people to get this. And I'm not talking about, you don't need 1 million people. You need about 1,000 people to really understand it. They can help lead others and raise consciousness.
Interesting. We've almost out, close to our closing time. Dr. Shiva, any last remarks you want to make? Any last statements for based on your campaign?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is, I was out collecting signatures today. I go out on the ground. I'm a ground activist in addition to having all these degrees and all these other things I do. I'm a big proponent of people getting on the ground and doing very practical things and having a sense of urgency. Right now, go to Shiva, SHIVA, numeral 4, president.com, and go get a bumper sticker. You put that on the back rear windshield of your car, 100,000 people see it per day. This is people power. 100,000 people per day. So everyone go do that. It's simple. You pay $5. We deliver it. We don't even charge shipping. Just do that. Number 2, if you go to shivaforpresident.com, go to the download section. There's a wonderful flyer you can print on your home printer or your library. It explains to you what is the real problem. Who is the swarm? You got links to our campaign video, and then you are invited to our town hall that we do every Thursdays, 11 a.m. and at 8 p.m. It's a long day for me. And you can go to shivaforpresident.com/town hall or V as in Victor, vashiva.com/orientation. Second action step. Third is go to truthfreedomhealth.com and become a warrior scholar. And when you go through that program, when you're done, you can donate. You get to be a philanthropist. You can donate that course to as many children as you want, under the age of 18. So those are the actionable things everyone can do. But the Movement for Truth, Freedom, Health, our campaign for Shiva for President, really gives you a real alternative, not quote unquote independent. This is a true movement that enables you to stand up on your own 2 feet, independent of them. So thank you.
No, thank you, Dr. Shiva, for taking the time to explaining your campaign and very interesting words. And I hope that the rest of America will listen to this. And I wish you all the best when you go outside of Massachusetts and to other parts of New England, the Eastern Seaboard, South Florida, the Midwest, Rocky Mountain, and Pacific. Hopefully, people get to listen to you more. And you're right, the bottoms up people. The individuals itself that will rise up and say no more. So I appreciate you coming on to our little podcast show. We appreciate it. And if you ever want to come back, you got Seth's number, and we'll be glad to have you back.
Great, guys. Thank you very much. Be the light. Best to you and your families. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.